Welcome to Scott's Music Cave. I just bought an historic Selmer Mark 6 tenor saxophone. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the previous owner, and we're going to talk about the saxophone itself and take a close look at it. So this saxophone was owned by Dick Albrecht, who was a big band musician, moved to Kansas City in the 1950s. Previous to that, he was touring with Henry Mancini and Andy Williams, and in 1950 or in the 50s, Tommy Reed offered him a gig to play at the Mulebach, a full-time gig playing there, and so he moved to Kansas City and lived in Kansas City until he passed away last year. He was a member of the Kansas City Federation of Musicians and was the secretary and treasurer up until his death. And I never did actually meet him. I have a lot of friends that knew him and had nothing but great things to say about him. And I'm lucky enough to own his saxophone now. And this is a 1963 Selmer Mark 6 that's been played professionally, and overall it's still in great condition. It does have a ton of mechanical work. It needs an overhaul, but it's been professionally played, and it does have some of those signs of a saxophone that's been played professionally. But let's take a look at it, and I'm going to show you the saxophone and some of the cool features of it, because this one is a little bit older than a lot of the Mark 6s. I mean, it's a 63. Selmer started making the Mark 6 in 55. But this one still has the two-piece side keys, which are desirable because they're quiet compared to the ball joint side keys. And it's got the metal thumb hook, which, I mean, that's personal preference, but I do like the metal thumb hook. It's just a little more durable and more classic to me. It doesn't have the Mark 6 up here, which the older ones, older than this one, did have a Mark 6 engraved here, where this one does have the Mark 6 engraved on the bow ring, or the bell to bow ring. And it's original lacquer. It's got that really nice dark honeycomb type lacquer. Really the only couple things I noticed on it, there's a dent here, which I won't take that out until I've cleaned it, because it's not extremely dirty, but I don't want to start doing dent work until I have anything that's on the inside clean, because you start pushing dents out, and if there's debris in there, it could actually affect how the dent looks, because it'll basically just could mark up your dent work. But the bow, it's pretty much perfect. There's a couple little dings there, and a ding here, and the neck maybe had a slight pull down, although it does feel like I don't really feel any kind of ovaling, but I will check that before I overhaul it and address anything that's there. But when you see that kind of a line, that usually means it's had some sort of pull down, but it could be really minor, or maybe this has already been corrected. And it's really hard to tell, but that looks like that S was probably originally blue, but it could have been black. I've seen some that are black, and I'm assuming that's probably all original, because this finish is definitely original. You can see the engraving there is really nice and crisp. Your typical Mark 6 engraving. It does seem to have a little bit of extra engraving. I don't know if that was just from 63 or if there was something that the engraver had to correct. Sometimes you'll get a little scrape and the engraver will just engrave over the scrape. I want to show you the other Mark 6 I have, because it has the ball joint type side keys, and if you're not familiar with that, I just wanted to show you the difference. Now this one that isn't set up, I'll put felt on the little rods that stick out and make those really quiet, where this one still has, the keys are dry, and then there's key play and everything else. But be right back. I'm going to grab the other Mark 6 I've got and show you the differences that I'm talking about. So this is the 72 Mark 6, and it does have the ball joint connections here on the side C and B flat, and you can hear they're quite a bit noisier than the other one. This one needs work too, but you can tighten those up a little bit, but those generally will stay that noisy. And it also has the plastic thumb hook. Still has the Mark 6 on the bell to bow ring, And then if you look at the engraving, you can see I'll hold them up side by side. But you can see that the 63 has more engraving. Also the plastic thumb hook that I was mentioning. But beside that, everything else will be identical. And it'd be really interesting to see how these compare when they're done. This one does play a few notes, and it's got a big sound. I know that talking to some of his friends that they said this horn was killer and needed. Once it's done, it should just be a fantastic Mark VI, as you would expect, as most Mark VIs are after they've been properly overhauled. Let's see if there's anything else that is of note. But there's the typical wear, just sort of like on the side there. But it's really not that bad considering the age of the instrument. And it's fascinating to me that this is a one-owner saxophone. And knowing the history and it's actually been played by a professional, and it's really special. I'm really happy to own it, and I'm also really excited to get it overhauled and playing. Hopefully, within the next month or so, I'll be able to have time to get to this one. I'm finally to the point where I'm caught up. I just wanted to show you the case as well. Actually, he was actually clarinet. He was a big band player, so of course he played clarinet and flute. And he played other instruments as well. But I actually was able to purchase his clarinet, which was a center tone from 52 or 53, so a little bit older than the saxophone. But the case is really interesting. It's got a case cover on it, as you can see, and it looks like the case cover's been on it its whole life, because you pull the case cover off and let's pull it off and take a look at it without breaking anything. Because the case is in fantastic condition. I'm assuming he used this case his whole life because he played in big bands and would have had to carry his flute and clarinet with him, and this case would do that. And the clarinet was in this case when I purchased it. But look at that case. It's almost perfect. The handle's probably been replaced. You can see it's black, and that one's the tan leather color of the original case. So this handle's probably been replaced. Although I've seen some Selmer cases where it's got what appears to be original handles, but they're different on both sides. And then the inside. Looks like that. So you could put a flute case here, and then there was I'll grab it here in a second, but there's a clarinet case that goes here, and then there's a compartment underneath for your accessories, and then of course the tenor saxophone goes here, and there's a compartment here for your neck. But yeah, the case is in amazing condition. So when I get the saxophone done, I was talking to a friend of mine who knew him. I'd like to go visit his widow and maybe have him or me play the saxophone for her. I thought people usually appreciate that when they can hear the horn played again. I've done that a few times, and it's usually a pretty fun experience. Let me show you just the clarinet case. So here's the clarinet case, and this goes in that little compartment I showed you, and actually has clarinets in there too. It's a center tone. I've got, of course, have the barrels for it, but This one needs an overhaul. But these are, if you're a jazz musician and you've never tried one of these center tones, you need to try one, because I see so many doublers that are playing R13s, which are fantastic and they work really well. But if you're only playing jazz and you're playing like a jazz, like a 5JB or something like that, I mean these go so well with them. I'm playing an old Con right now, 424 444 in, and like the bore is just bigger, and it sounds great. I hope I'm gonna demonstrate those. I will demonstrate those on the channel eventually. But anyways, enough of that. These center tones are really nice, and you can have them. You can get them fairly cheap. I mean, I just sold one of mine that I had been playing personally, and it was overhauled, really nicely done. I sold it for $1,200, and I mean, as good a clarinet as anyone could imagine. I think that's going to do it for the video. I will update when I get this one done. I have other projects that I'm still trying to get through. It's been an extremely busy summer, and I'm just trying to get through a lot of things here. I've got a couple fun projects that I'm finally getting almost done, and then it'd be time to get, I think this will probably be my first one that I'm going to work on once I get the, I've got a Mark 7 that I'm finishing up, and then a Series 2 with black lacquer that's almost done, and then I'm going to jump in and get, I think, this done, because this has a lot of potential. And look at it. It doesn't get much better than that. So yeah, let me just show you a little bit of a close-up, and then we'll conclude the video. Also, let me see if I can show you. Well, try to show you some of the pads. But they've been toast for a long time. I think he quit playing decades ago, and the horns kind of just sat there. And again, I'm lucky to own this saxophone. I'm lucky to own anything that I own. But this one's definitely special. My name is Scott Reed. I'm a woodwind repair technician. I also buy, sell, collect, trade. I play professionally, and now I have a YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, and if you made it this far, thanks again. And also, please consider liking and subscribing.